Since 1997, One Piece has remained one of the most iconic and beloved shonen series to ever grace the scene, and on January 3rd, it reached over 1,000 chapters. Now, that is a lot of manga to read, and while it seems daunting, what truly matters in the end is what it brought to the magazine it's been published in, and Japanese pop culture as a whole. Characters, fights, comedy, flashbacks, and world building are some of the best the manga industry has to offer. Eiichiro Oda has achieved what many have aspired to become, a worthy successor to Akira Toriyama. And in honor of 1,000 chapters, and because I kinda have writer's block at the moment, what better way to honor a guy who gave us a rubber man pushing a zombie into the ground than to honor his series in 10 videos. 10 videos. Top 10s in fact. So to start this thing I'm now gonna have to fulfill, we must begin with a bang, or a gum gum pistol. I've talked a lot about fights on this channel before, and how the shonen action genre has had many defining fights in the past. All could be summed up as teenagers screaming, firing energy blasts, and most certainly getting brain damage. But when it comes to One Piece, most people, and that's including fans too, don't seem to find the fights in them to be all that complex or intricate as other titles. In fact, it could be at best basic. So when ranking this list, I look for many variables that make One Piece fights work. Motivations, plot relevance, progression, and of course, the fight itself. As long as the same two characters are still fighting each other, and with no takeouts, that is still considered a fight. But enough about regulations, because in the pirate world, there are no rules. So let's just get to the top 10 fights in One Piece, starting with
Number 10.
I guess we're starting at top 10 without Luffy or Zoro. Well, this should be an indicator that this list might not contain some of your more peak fight scenes, especially since this fight is the very first in the Strahd's battle against the elite members of Crocodile's Baroque works. And that's not to say that all the other fights weren't considered. Sanji's battle with Mr. 2 was a great back and forth, Nami gets to shine in her first real fight against the prickly Miss Doublefinger, and Zoro's fight against Mr. 1 is usually a top 5 must on most people's list. But I love me some underdogs, and both Usopp and Chopper definitely had the most challenging time against this hit and run duo. The Mr. 4 team is made up of the slow yet freakishly strong Mr. 4, the loudmouth middle-aged Karen Miss Merry Christmas, and a gun that ate a devil fruit that made him a dog. And no, I didn't mix those two words up. It was a gun, but then there was a way that inanimate objects can just become animals, and just take my word for it, okay? With the power to turn into a mole, Miss Merry Christmas digs a plethora of holes around her two heroes, and uses them alongside her partner to pop in and out while unleashing heavy baseballs. And oh yeah, the baseballs explode. Usopp and Chopper are on the defense and have to dodge, parry, and survive long enough to figure out the strategy behind these two lethal battery mates. What makes this fight truly one of a kind is that it is the first real tag team fight we get in the series. Sure, we had some moments in Little Garden with Usopp and Karu, but this is the first time we see both Usopp and Chopper band together to fight opponents far stronger than they are. They are physically strong fighters, and their only counter in the first half is a foul play in the form of Usopp's 5-ton hammer, which is really just an inflatable balloon. I also love it when Usopp goes and plays a round of whack-a-mole against Merry Christmas with a small helping of the good old-fashioned but sinister rubber band of doom. But once Mr. 4 team figures out that Usopp is just a punch and dirty hitter, they go straight back to murking the helpless duo with even more intensive blasts and wall slams from the nearby ruins. That is until Tony figures out the secret behind the tunnels and uses their pitches against them, blowing them up along with the field. But even that is not enough to keep them down for good, and realizing the power gap between them, Usopp makes a cowardly getaway. Merry Christmas catches him, but makes the one mistake in mocking Luffy's apparent death to Usopp, giving him the courage to, well, survive getting his skull smashed by Baby Huey. I really have a soft spot for Usopp in this scene, as no matter what dire situation he's put into, he will always stand up for what his friends believe in. It's just more a cathartic bat in the face that needed him to get back into the fight, which I'll say right now, It happens a lot to him. And once he finishes his intensive monologue of never messing with his captain, the Straw Hat Tag Team manages to finish off these minor league chumps by using some more cheap tricks to score the winning run. I am so sorry for all this baseball slang. It's my dad's fault. The fight is what I consider a really great showcase of One Piece's best traits roll into one. The quirky gags and humor, the ridiculous displays of powers, and some nice character moments during and after the fight. The battle proved so integral to Usopp and Chopper that it was referenced again during Fishman Island against another digger. If I have to find a bitter critique though with our first entry, is that it doesn't do that much to the story, and is more of a way for Oda to get his baseball gags out there. The villains of Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas are also very standard, and don't add too much insight into their backgrounds. But with all that said, this is still one of the best tag team battles in the series history, and while not an ultimate grand slam, it was still a knock out of the park. Okay, swear to God, that's the last one. I swear to God.
Number 9.
Early One Piece is a very fascinating thing to look back on. Like when Luffy didn't have his gears, or when Sanji wasn't hating on drag queens. Good times. As for the fights, they were fairly average at best. There are some fun ones though, like Luffy against Bucky the Clown or Arlong, but those fights are very much eclipsed by a lot of other fights later down the line. But what newer fights always seem to lack when compared to the old ones is the dynamic battle arenas and fight locales. Well, this fight takes the one big fear for Devil Fruit users, the water, and puts our Monkey Boy in the middle of it, all while facing the action figure captain Don Krieg and his arsenal of weapons. Don Krieg is certainly not a compelling One Piece villain by any stretch, but his arrogance and lack of caution is a keen reminder that the Grand Line only accepts those with the most grit. And after a humiliating slaughter from Dracula Mihawk, Krieg plans to steal the seafarer Baratier for a second go at the Grand Line. And since he and Luffy share the same dream, they are of course at odds with each other. Getting pissed over Krieg poisoning his second in command, Luffy goes headfirst against the Pirate Admiral, who barrages him with poison suction cups, darts, to cripple Luffy. Wrapping himself in a spike cape, Krieg seems to have one-upped Luffy's recklessness, but is shocked when Luffy powers through that intense pain to give Don a punch through the porcupine defense. Krieg does get back up, but can't quite keep pace with Luffy's agility, and resorts to putting together his ultimate weapon, the mighty Battle Spear, which is really just a bomb on a stick. With hardly any ground to stand on, Luffy has mistakenly been caught in Don Krieg's trap, and is surrounded by water with only the debris from Don Krieg's wrecked ship giving him any foothold. It also doesn't help that he is losing a lot of blood due to Krieg's earlier attack, and is taking hits from the spear. In many ways, this is Luffy's most desperate fight up to this point, as in others prior to this, he seemed to always have a leg up on his opponent. But in this fight, it highlights a significant flaw in Luffy's reckless fighting style, and how Krieg did in fact have an edge against Luffy in this battle, until Luffy reveals that all that reckless charging actually broke Krieg's spear, and gets in close to try and break Don Krieg's gold plate armor, all leading up to a seemingly climactic finisher as Luffy manages to break through Krieg's defense. But that is not the end, as Krieg wakes up and pulls a steel net out of, I don't know, I guess his ass then? With intention to throw Luffy into the ocean. Only thing Krieg didn't realize was that he was very vulnerable to wood, as Luffy twists himself and nails Krieg onto the docks of the Baratier, ending the fight and showing who has the most grit to enter the Grand Line. It's a little disappointing we don't get a lot of battles in the high seas of One Piece these days. It was only until Whole Cake Island that we got one again, and even then, that was more of a long chase scene than anything else. The major disadvantage of being a pirate with a Devil Fruit power on the water is a risky gamble that should be used more often, but is mostly seen nowadays as something more funny than life-threatening. The other problem I had with this fight is while Luffy is presented with an interesting flaw in his fighting style, it's hardly used in the grand scheme of things, until at most the Alabasta Saga. But regardless of the early One Piece flaws, it was a very good sea battle with stakes, fun, and a villain who looks really good on a toy shelf. At least he has more personality that way.
Number 8.
Out of all the Zoro fights I could pick for this list, this is the one that sticks out. While it's not as intense as the Mr. One fight or ridiculously fun like Kaku or Pika, this one is a very different kind of Zoro fight. For one, Zoro is handicapped with only having 2 swords, and is facing an undead samurai with the shadow of Brook inside of him. And this Ronin is definitely not gonna give Zoro any easy time. Fun fact actually, Shimotsuki Ryuma actually made his first debut in Ichiro Oda's one-shot manga, Monsters, and is most notable in life for slicing a dragon's head off, a feat which Zoro would do later in life. The one thing I always seem to remember about this fight is in how it's structured, showing the aftermath of the fight first to give the audience a little bit of misdirection into how extremely strong the Samurai of Wano are. And even if it's not the actual Ryuma fighting, his use of Brook's swordplay against Zoro's 3-sword style just shows how terrifying the body of a well-trained veteran can be. Ryuma is able to parry and endure many of Zoro's attacks, as well as Zoro's to his. We don't usually see a lot of evenly placed matchups in One Piece, and this one is notable for containing tons of foreshadowing for future events. The Samurai of Wano are introduced to the world of One Piece, and the importance of Ryuma's sword Shusui will become an important plot device later on. While Zoro cutting through Mr. One is still impressive, or taking on a giant country of an enemy like Pika is a boss moment for Zoro, this is one that truly made me really appreciate him as not just a badass, but as a character. Zoro shows a very samurai attitude towards Ryuma, and even acknowledges that their fight doesn't count, because it wasn't the actual Ryuma fighting himself. It just goes to show that he doesn't lose his honor as a swordsman, as he does, say, taking simple directions. It's a very gripping fight, and despite the obvious ending of Zoro landing the winning slice on Ryuma, it never feels like a beatdown or a deus ex machina. It's a short battle, but in this fan's opinion, the best fight Zoro never fought. Plus, he got a cool sword out of it too. It's nicely designed, it's got some power to it, and again.
Number 7.
Just a quick reminder, everyone, this list is highly subjective, so don't at me, please. The Davy Back fight has always gotten a bad rap in the community, and for very petty reasons. Sure, the anime version pumped it full of filler and is definitely an arc with hardly any relevance to the plot, but it still had a lot of good characters and some of the best comedy in the series. And as One Piece fights go, Luffy vs. Foxy the Silver Fox is just so much damn fun. Despite winning back Chopper in the second round, Luffy still needs to win the last round against the Foxy Pirates, otherwise risk losing one of his crewmates forever. The setup is a boxing match on, coincidentally, Foxy's own flagship, and Luffy has to give it his all if he has any chance to win the Davy Back fight. With the suggestions of Usopp, he comes out donning the ultimate afro, fueling him with the souls of the champion and giving him the strength he needs to face off against Foxy. Too bad it doesn't start off well. Luffy is caught completely off guard by Foxy's strategy of using slow beams on his particular joints, then going in for the kill with a bargain bin version of Luffy's Gatling gun, and almost sending him out of the ring. Luffy recovers and gets right back on the ship, and due to the rules set in place, Foxy can use anything on his ship since it's part of the ring. That means lots of cannonballs, mirrors, spikes, and more are contained in this wacky funhouse of a pirate ship, and like his cousin Dick Dastardly, it mostly blows up in Foxy's face. This is such an absurd fight. While others might argue that this match doesn't hold a candle to more desperate struggles or conflicts in the series, this is one that holds the spirit of Oda's comedic writing. The reactions are nearly perfect in some scenes, like how Foxy can poorly disguise himself as different family members, yet always seems to dumbfound Luffy. Seriously, if you have this face, you are never gonna procreate. But to no surprise, Luffy gets the upper hand on Foxy several times, and is obviously the stronger of the two. What makes it even funnier is that this is the first time we actually see Foxy's bounty, and that is a whopping 23 mil compared to the 100 million of Luffy's. Yet despite that huge bounty gap, Foxy does manage to put up a fight, and his cheating does make him a formidable opponent. From using a slow sword to a giant gorilla punching machine, he pulls every dirty trick from his ginormous orange overalls to really give Luffy a couple of black eyes. And while the stakes aren't too desperate on paper, it does motivate Luffy to try and get up in order to keep his friends with him, something that does play a major part in the next arc. It's not taken too seriously, but considering we have a Marine Admiral that appears a couple chapters later, and it is followed up by the arc that almost broke the Straw Hat crew, I'd say this fight packs a lot more heft to its punch than many others. By the end, you actually do get wrapped up in the full-on stupidity of it all, as the final countdown starts up, and Foxy is finally taken out by his one cheating method via a mirror in Luffy's afro. It's a very stupid fight, with a fun yet ridiculous antagonist that might not be loved by many, but is one that I think fits the series of One Piece.
Number 6.
World building has always been the thing One Piece does the best out of any series centering around fighting. Complicated yet easy to follow, impressive in scale and simplicity, its factions and alliances are what make reading One Piece such a joy to experience. There has to be at least one fight not involving the Straw Hats to make the list. Good thing this fight is the catalyst to one of the best sagas in the series run. Porcus the Ace has been after his former crewmate Teach for years due to his mutinous action of killing a squad commander over a devil fruit. He scours the globe for many chapters and even in some cover pages before finally coming face to face with him. On the Benaru Islands, he looks down upon the aptly named Blackbeard and his cronies for the sole purpose of executing him. Teach's crewmates fire back and try to take out the commander before they can get at their captain, but learn pretty easily that wooden bullets don't do so well against fire. Blackbeard is completely torched by the flames, yet to Ace's surprise, gets back up again and reveals why he murdered his former crewmate. Turns out he was in possession of one of the most powerful devil fruits of them all, and unleashes the power of the Dark Fruit, a miasma of pure darkness that sucks like a black hole and can even nullify devil fruit powers for a brief time. And against a power wielder whose sole reliance is mainly on his devil fruit, Ace has been turned from the hunter into Teach's prey. This fight is truly insane. Not only is it the first time we see Ace really on death's door against a villainous chest-haired captain, but it's just a great opportunity to learn more about Blackbeard as a threat. When we first met him, he seemed like a similar dreamer like Luffy in his pursuit for riches and power, but turns into an arch-enemy as his method of obtaining royalty is through destruction and chaos. Plus, he has quite a nasty straight punch, pummeling and shattering Ace's bones in the process, and even tanking some of Ace's attacks. Fiery Dolls, St. Elmo's Fire, and even Flame Emperor are not enough to stop Teach in his overwhelming ability. It also showcases Ace's dedication to his pirate captain, and a hint into why he is someone who will never back down despite being outmatched by his opponent. This all ends in a climactic final clash of light and shadow as the entire island is destroyed. Ace is then apprehended by the world government afterwards and sentenced to death, building into one of the best story arcs in the series' history. I guess if there's maybe one problem with this fight is that it has less to do with action than it is storytelling. Lots of dialogue is exchanged between Ace and Teach, and while some of it is very informative, it can feel like it's dragging on in places. Nonetheless, this fight is a perfect example that less is more, and that the full fight does need to be shown to get the full effect. And since it leads into some of the best moments of the entire series, there is no reason why this fire show couldn't make the list. But there is one burning question that evades me to this day. Did Blackbeard cover his chest hairs in hockey?
Number 5.
The Japanese really do have a thing for kaiju, and this fight is one of ultimate kaiju proportions. Things that One Piece does very little in terms of fight variety are tag teams, group fights, and letting female characters have a one-on-one. Actually, hold on, we did have Tashigi and Punk Hazard and several brief skirmishes with very poor results. Oh wow, Oda, why can't you let the girls fight anymore? Anyway, let's just focus on the best group fight in the whole series. The Straw Hats versus Oars and Moria. Oars is one of the biggest giants in One Piece history, and combining this colossus with the shadow of Luffy is a disaster for both sides. The crew minus Luffy and Nami all join together to try and fight Oars, and find out that not only does Oars act just like Luffy, he is also just as fast and hits just as hard. Oars utterly curb stomps the nearby Straw Hats, all with little difficulty. But like cockroaches, the Straw Hats get right back up and unleash their counterattack. The one thing you can say about this fight scene that stands out is scale. The idea of average humans and a skeleton facing a zombie titan is straight up some RPG kind of stuff, with various attacks and moves used to try and halt the beast as much as possible, which the crew actually do manage to pull off. In some spectacular sequences, everyone brings out the big guns to topple over the former Continent Polar in a full display of their best potential as a team. It's nice to see how dynamic and trustworthy they are in each other's abilities, and how several of them can sync so well with different crewmates. like Chopper and Franky combining their strength to punch ores, Zoro and Sanji using Jenga-like stones as projectiles, or even most of them forming the humorously useless fighting robot Big Emperor. This is a demonstration of the Straw Hats' camaraderie, and no matter how serious things get, they still have just enough time to look like idiots. Oars is also a pretty funny opponent as well. It's just a bigger Luffy. And even taking out the stretching part, his size and strength are only countered by the cracks in his personality. As the battle rages on, the effort to tame and break this seemingly invincible zombie starts to wear thin, as Zoro knows that the only way to truly win this fight is to put Oars down for good, with or without Luffy beating Moria. And speaking of the giant onion, Moria suddenly makes his appearance inside Oars' stomach, and with his assistance, begins to knock out and completely crush the Straw Hats' efforts. Nami joins the fight soon after, but then it's revealed that Moria can manipulate Oars' shadow to stretch and fight. Oh, okay then. The YouTuber Totally Not Mark did put it best that Moria's power seems a little too convenient in some regards. From stretching Oars' shadow like Luffy's Gum Gum powers or switching places with his shadow, it does make the fight drag a little bit in the middle. Not enough to take me out of the fight, but quite frankly, it kinda got close at some points. Although it did win me over again once we learned why Oars died in the first place. Turns out the loincloth he has on was the only thing he was wearing when he died in the Arctic, making everyone even more motivated to beat this giant moron. Yeah, too bad to get wrecked anyway. Most of the Straw Hats cannot even hope to touch Oars now, and many of them start to fall one after the other. And despite the efforts of Usopp shooting a bag of salt into Oars' mouth, the only way to kill a zombie, Moria blocks it with his shadow, and orders for both Usopp and Nami to be crushed under Oars' feet. Luckily, they are saved in the nick of time by Nightmare Luffy. Taking in the stolen shadows purified by Moria, Luffy re-enters the fight and completely makes quick work of the fat bastards. Now the curb stop is on the other foot, as Luffy takes Oars and tosses him around by his hair, turning the terrifying giant of a giant into a bloody garbage pail kid. Knocking out Moria in the process, Luffy unveils a hail of punches onto Oars and seems to take him out. But there is a problem. Luffy has lost his power boost and is tired out, while Oars stands once more. The hidden citizens of Thriller Bark start to panic as their trump card floats away, and all hope seems lost. Then the Straw Hats all get back up and plan their final attack to put Oars back in his grave. The damage that Oars took is real, and despite the lack of feeling any pain, it turns into his greatest weakness, as all the Straw Hats converge on his weak points and freeze the giant in place. Luffy dives from above and smothers Oars with a giant bazooka blast to break his spine and finally take down their biggest opponent yet. This fight is a great showcase of what the crew have learned over their journey together, and also takes into account the huge power gap they are experiencing with strong pirate crews like Moria's. While it might not be paced proper like other great One Piece fights, it holds up mostly due to this action-packed and thrilling exhibition of our main characters. The saying goes that size isn't everything, but in this fight, size most certainly is.
Number 4.
I think Luffy is gonna need a rabies shot after this tussle is over. This fight is widely considered one of the most brutal and toughest fights Luffy has ever been in, and with his opponent being the deadly and dangerous Leopard Man Lucci, it was truly the hypest fight in One Piece. In their first encounter, Lucci dominated Luffy and even threw him like a rag doll into the city below, but considered lucky that Lucci wasn't ordered to kill him at that point. But with the Straw Hats' invasion of Enies Lobby and Luffy hot on the trail of getting Robin back from the world government, Lucci is given the okay to murder the rubber swashbuckler. Taking place in the storage room below the Bridge of Hesitation, the two begin their epic duel with raw fisticuffs. It's actually one of the many best moments of the fight. We know that Lucci can easily take down Luffy with his leopard form, but his 6 powers martial arts are enough to soften Luffy up for Lucci to completely devour later on. It's a race against the clock, as Lucci acts like a dutiful guard and knocks Luffy back each time while taking little to no damage. It's only until Luffy pulls out Gear Second to give Franky a chance to catch up to Robin that Lucci goes full furry cosplay and finally goes all out. We've already seen the full potential that the gear system can do against a regular CP9 member like Blueno, but do know that some of the gears have major consequences. Second gear has a weakness of wearing the user out, and making him weaker if pumped for too long. Lucci even starts to figure out that if Franky can get to the bridge, then the rest of the Straw Hats might not be too far behind. With a swift kick, he slices the wall and lets the seawater pour into the lower levels to drown out the Straw Hats in the tunnels behind Luffy. Moving upstairs, Luffy decides to keep fighting Lucci in full confidence that his crew will make it out alive. Even Lucci acknowledges Luffy's leadership when compared to his own boss, but quickly snaps back at Luffy with devastating blow after blow, until Luffy decides to unveil the unknown power of third gear, which is making like Choji from Naruto and expanding his body parts to gigantic measures, taking out the entire column of the building and launching Lucci into the sea. Luckily, a marine ship is nearby and Lucci dive bombs into it. From there, Luffy slingshots onto the battleship and attempts to crush the now shirtless CP9 agent. But with reduced speed from the third gear, it puts Luffy at a disadvantage, as he gets mauled by Lucci in his leopard form and nearly vivisected by his killer kicks before his power goes off, resulting in him turning into Chibi Luffy, which is for me one of the problems with the fight. It's humorous to see Luffy deck Lucci with a mini punch at most, but it also diminishes a lot of the tension in this part of the battle. But at least it doesn't last too long, and they get back to the encroaching sense of dread as battleships start popping up around the area of battle. The Buster Call has commenced, and despite the horror they're launching on the island, Luffy is growing more desperate as defeating this Jellicle Cat is the only way he and his friends will survive the situation. Lucci is also growing desperate as well, and takes it upon himself to finish Straw Hat off with his secret technique, the Rokyogun, or Six King Gun in English. Yeah, it doesn't really pop that well. After 2 blasts, Luffy is fatigued and clinging to life by a thread, with Lucci about to go after the captain's friends. But with a heartfelt and terrified plea from Usopp to get up, Luffy stands and faces Lucci one last time, vowing to not fall to the ground again. As we close to the end, this fight went all over the place in its presentation and character interactions, and the way it tires both these fighters out as if they're using all of their energy to just keep throwing down attacks is some of the most stellar action sequences in One Piece. But with some tail action, Lucci looks to have won the fight and walks away from the bloody Rubber Man, until Luffy bends back, plants his feet, and unleashes probably one of the best finishers in all of Shonen, the Jet Gatling. The anime especially really sells how intense the scene is, as it flashes through all the events that led up to this final bone-crushing finale, as Lucci is blown through the concrete and lies in a bloody mess down below. The fight is over, and Robin is safe. Luffy vs. Lucci had probably the best progression of any One Piece fight, and displayed some impressive choreography and artwork. Now, if only its flaws didn't get in the way. The first being the amount of time it cuts back and forth to many scenes in the middle of the fight, which does hurt the engagement factor. And the other problem being that while Lucci is a great obstacle for Luffy to overcome, he is not at all an interesting character in execution. Which is why, just like a YouTube AMV video from the 2000s, the Luffy vs. Lucci fight does start to feel a bit slow or not as well polished in comparison to other final battles. But with the complaints, it is still one of the most popular fights in Shonen Jump history. It was epic, it was brutal, and it took the combat of One Piece up to a whole new level with the gear system. It was, for a while, the fight to beat in One Piece, until a certain Sweet Commander came into the picture.
Number 3.
Welcome to the top 3, and who better to start things off than Luffy's opponent, the featured sightseeing, donut-loving mochi man, Charlotte Katakuri. The one thing I found in this list so far is a lack of a strong rivalry between opponents, and even fights with ones in them tended to have a lot of problems in terms of the fight itself or just padding. But Katakuri's fight with Luffy is a perfect balance, as the two fighters take very similar fighting styles and have, in some ways, a mutual respect for the other. Yes, the saying goes, anything you can do, I can do better. Actually, the entire fight is completely one-sided for the first few minutes or so. Luffy can't even land a single hit on the guy, easily showing the chasm in power between these two. Luffy tries to go fast, Katakuri goes faster. Luffy goes in with a giant fist, Katakuri makes a bigger one. Luffy tries to hit him with Armin and Haki. Katakuri just predicts the move despite not being a Logia user. Katakuri's biggest strength, aside from the ability to create and slightly become mochi, is his enhanced power of seeing into the future. The fight continues as Luffy gets up time and time again and seems to not get anywhere. And the blows that Luffy takes in this fight have gotta be the most viscerally dramatic blows he ever receives. Taking into account all the abuse he is given at the very beginning, This would hardly even count as a fight at all. But luckily for Luffy, he also wastes just enough time for Katakuri to become impatient. He is on a bit of a time crunch and needs to have a snack to feel calm again. With Luffy looking to have suffocated under some poop-shaped mochi, Katakuri takes his delicious donuts and builds himself a temple to dine in. But Luffy gets out of the mochi coffin and makes like the big bad wolf and blows the house away, revealing the shocking face of Katakuri, a secret that he would take to the grave, and anyone who saw it. He goes to unleash his anger on the severely beaten Straw Hat when suddenly Luffy lands a hit. Yeah, right under the chin, and soon after proceeds to go Gear 4 and knock the Billion Berry Man some more. After so many chapters and so much hype around how invincible this opponent truly is, it was such a genuine burst of excitement to finally see him take damage. Even when Katakuri rebounds and gets back on the offensive, the anxiety starts to build as Luffy has to figure out a new way to get past Katakuri again. As the hours go by and the fight takes short breaks and lengthy flashbacks about the nature of hockey, Luffy gets his head in the game and slowly starts to predict the exact same moves that Katakuri is wailing on him. But then, Luffy takes a massive hole in the stomach. It's revealed that Katakuri had some outside interference in the form of his little sister Flampe, trying her best to insult the honor of their duel. So Katakuri does the only respectable action and stabs himself with his trident to make the fight fair again. Despite being the model big brother to the Big Mom family, the way Flampe just scorns and harasses her older family member is just a betrayal. In fact, the entire arc has been a showcase in how this literal family is just toxic relationships built around serving the household, or holding on to power by any means. It just goes to show that sometimes your blood family might not be your real family. I believe Sanji on that note. And it's just that kind of narrative thread that elevates this fight way more than the Luffy and Rob Lucci encounter. Despite having a ton more peaks and valleys in the Enies Lobby fights, this at least presents a more complex and nuanced villain, who's only just looking out for the family, even if the family are petty assholes who would make fun of his looks. Everything from the way Katakuri tries to never land on his back, or never show his true face in battle, only stems to tell the audience that this man's insecurities are the only thing holding him back from being truly perfect. And the fact his opponent doesn't care for the actions of his weaknesses, nor the fact that Katakuri had outside help, makes this fight a true man's duel. Okay, maybe not the pinnacle man's duel, but regardless, they unleash their Conqueror's Haki to knock out all spectators and start their final confrontation. I also love the fact that Katakuri even takes off his Big Mom jacket, as if to say this fight is not for the good of the family anymore, it's now for himself. Out of all the fights in the series, this is the one that has the strongest relationship between characters in the heat of the moment. They barely know each other, yet their fight is a literal mirror of what they want to be. A small, young rookie who wants to surpass emperors, and a larger foe wanting to feel humility. The fight finishes off with a gorgeous sequence of events, as Luffy reveals a new Gear 4th mode known as Snake Man that matches the full power of Katakuri's own awakened power. Like, look at Katakuri in some of these panels, he is a motherfucking animal. It's a spectacle in the manga, but it's even better in the anime version, and that is usually not something I recommend most of the time. The moves, the tension, the line work are just so goddamn good. They use their most devastating techniques and go at each other like madmen until their last blows finally hit, taking them both out. And as they both get back up, the one to finally let go of his pride and admit defeat is the one who is said to never know defeat in the first place. Katakuri falls flat on his back and gives Luffy the W. It's an amazing fight, some top quality animation, character progression, and just some really cool action shots. It's a must-watch anime moment for sure, and makes up for some moments in between that were, let's just say, not so sweet. Now, if you'll pardon me for a second, time to make the donuts.
Number 2.
Water 7 is easily one of the best arcs in the entire series. It was depressing, extremely provocative, and houses some of the most iconic moments in One Piece ever. And the tearful battle between two friends ranks it very high in my books. The state of the Going Merry has always been an issue ever since the Straw Hats returned from Skypiea, and as they enter the port city of Water 7 to get their ship repaired, they're only met with bad news all around. Robin disappears, the money to fix the ship is stolen by the Frankie family, and the Going Merry is deemed by the shipwrights as damaged beyond repair. It's just gut punch after gut punch. on top of Usopp being beaten nearly to death by the renegade thieves who took half of the money. Luffy is put into a hell of a bind, but for the safety of his crew, he decides to bid farewell to the ship that's been with them ever since the East Blue. Too bad Usopp isn't happy about that. As the verbal exchange between the captain and the sniper become more and more violent, the entire crew looks on in shock as the two best friends are going at each other's throats. Usopp makes the final decision and leaves the crew, but won't see the ship he grew to love be left abandoned, so he challenges his former captain to a duel for the fate of the Going Merry. Luffy accepts and waits for Usopp on the shoreline at night. A deep fog covers the area as Usopp returns and fully intends to beat Luffy. The setup to this encounter is just oozing with hostility and great sadness. Luffy and Usopp have been through so much together, and considering their childhood heroes are on the same pirate ship, you couldn't even believe they would ever fight like this. It's not just the fear of the Going Merry that Usopp hates to see go, but the anxiety that he would be left behind one day due to all of his past mistakes. And he vows to prove himself to Luffy by facing him in a mortal duel. And for a good chunk of it, he actually puts Luffy on the edge. From spitting out ketchup to covering Luffy with eggs, Usopp knows that Luffy isn't an opponent to fight against with brute strength. He makes sure to keep his distances and shoots several deadly objects and materials in order to win. It's a David versus Goliath scenario, as Usopp uses every tool in his bag to put Luffy into his crosshairs of a very nasty attack. Turns out the fog is actually gas, and that Usopp set the battlefield up beforehand to light Luffy up in one of the most impressive firebombs in One Piece. But despite the abuse Luffy takes, the real tragedy is that Luffy is just too strong for Usopp. Even after everything Usopp says to him, Luffy is still at odds in beating his best friend. Luffy recovers and goes in for some nasty punches, but Usopp keeps on going with cactus needles and triple bombs to still keep his distance. Luffy eventually closes the gap and is about to strike a bazooka on Usopp, but is nullified and sent right back via an impact dial straight to the face. But the effects of the dial take their toll on Usopp and leaves him helpless on the ground. The last of his trump cards used, Usopp is left in sorrow as Luffy delivers the final blow. The fight is over and Luffy walks away the victor. The audience watching it are torn apart by the scene that unfolded, and each one of them takes the conclusion very differently. Nami and Chopper are completely heartbroken by the state of their former comrade, while Zoro and Sanji look on in internal melancholy. But it's Luffy that feels the most pain of all of them. Despite his role as captain, he made the harshest decision of his career up to that point. It is a swift reminder that he has much to learn as a pirate captain. Moments like these could happen again if he doesn't act his age. The ripple effects really do hit hard for the rest of the saga, and it was one of the most shocking events in the history of the series. It showed a fracture of the family unit that was integral to the manga's length, and how it can easily break apart at an instant. While Usopp eventually pleased to be let on the ship again by the saga's end, it was definitely a sad moment regardless. No other fight had quite the same level of poignant uncertainty and feelings of unease like this one. And I don't think we will ever again. Before we get to our number one, let's look at some honorable mentions.
Number 1.
I'm really hoping none of you are surprised that this made top of the list. If not, then guess what? I am right. Luffy vs. Crocodile is and remains one of the most pinnacle fights in all of One Piece. And it's not even close. Sure, you can say the Lucci fights or Doflamingo fights or hell, even any other fights are way better in their execution, but if you want to tell me what fight impacts the series most, I always go back to this one. All three fights were considered for this list, and the honorable mentions, but the third and last battle under a collapsing tomb housing an ancient poneglyph is quite possibly the most iconic image I can think of when I talk about this fight. With Crocodile Sand Powers causing great issues in Luffy's previous two fights, and without the aid of some Yuba water to back him up, Luffy makes the brutal choice in using his own blood as a way to hit Crocodile. With Crocodile still injured from their second exchange, he decides to honor Luffy's determination and reckless abandon with another dirty trick, taking out a poisonous hook to put Luffy at risk. This is how a Pirates Duel is fought, and Luffy takes a stance to hopefully surpass Crocodile. As the fight begins, Luffy has to use what little brain power he has to evade the hook and land decisive blows on the evil Croc. And the villainy of Crocodile is also in full display, as he eggs Luffy on by waving his status around like a shield and making vile threats towards his well-being. He is an evil, authoritarian man and knows that if his bomb in the square of Alabarna goes off, he will win. And while I criticize how some fights in the list have a major hiccup of being too cluttered or unfocused, the subplot of the Straw Hats and Vivi trying to stop a bomb is very thrilling to look at. Back underground, Crocodile's experience keeps him at bay from Luffy's fiery blows as the entire mausoleum keeps crumbling down. However, Luffy's speed collapses and succumbs to the poison Crocodile inflicted on him throughout the fight. But Luffy's determination and sheer will puts him back up on his feet and declares to Croc that he will become the king of the pirates someday. And this is where we get a fascinating hidden meaning behind the actions of the villain, a veteran of the pirate age who is pessimistic towards proclamations of freedom or happiness. While not indirectly linked to what his character represents, it does offer insight into his inner workings as a once young yet inexperienced pirate challenging the strong. But despite going for the kill, Crocodile misses and Luffy takes out the poison hook on Croc's gold alloy and begins to pummel him with all he has. He launches him into the air, and Crocodile attempts to bury the Straw Hat beneath the rubble with the last of his sand powers. But Luffy takes his time, goes big boy, and blows himself into the air to finally snap this Crocodile's mouth shut. The best part about this final scene is that in the anime, a rendition of Vorok's Symphony No. 9 is played. It is quite possibly one of my personal favorite musical inserts in the whole show. Luffy hails on the Crocodile a storm of fists as he thrusts him through the bedrock and up into the skies of the city, finally defeating the Warlord in the most satisfying and heroic finish in the whole series. And as Luffy already said before, the only way to stop the fighting in Alabarna was to beat Crocodile, and thus, the reign that started the revolution ends it. The defeated Crocodile lies in the streets as its underground scheming and backstabbing are finally brought into the light. This is a perfect One Piece fight. The location is great, the choreography complements the opponent's fighting styles, Crocodile has a great rivalry with our hero, and the anime version especially elevates it with great animation and a fantastic score to complement. The emotional gravitas and the fact that our hero developed throughout the course of his tussle with Crocodile is just pure shonen greatness. I love this fight. And even the first two as well, for those moments of pure One Piece charm and shifts and tones. A great caper to the Alabasta arc, a great bottle opener to the long-term storytelling of One Piece, and a good, albeit forced inspiration for Luffy vs. Doflamingo. If you ain't Croc, then guess what guys? You ain't rockin'. And that's it! 10 awesome One Piece fights that are, in my humble opinion, the best of the best. But please let me know what your favorite fights are in One Piece. Agree or disagree, what do you think deserves to be on your lists? And subscribe for more because I'm putting together a lot of top 10s for One Piece coming soon. It's your Bra Man, signing off.